we pay him for that. You know?
We pay him for that. I'm going the academic look today.
I know.
With the
What's
glasses.
rocking the
Yeah, you're
glasses?
looking like
What's
that.
It's not by choice.
not by choice? Struggling? A little allergy action?
Contact just
Just
disintegrated, and I tried to put it in, like ripped and.
you know they have like their monthly or dailies. You know you actually have to replace them every once in a while. You know
It's
that,
my
right?
last one.
Oh,
So
well, that's good.
yeah, I'm in great shape.
All right.
Don't worry about that.
Well, anyway, on to something more important.
We'll put that in the budget.
Yeah, put that in the New York State budget.
Yeah.
Hey, that just got passed, by the way. You know that?
Oh wow.
Hey. Here with Senator Joe Griffo, New York State. A lot going on. We just had some budget stuff going on. I was happy to be part of that. We got a lot to unpack here, and quite the guess he wanted to be on here. I don't know if it's a good thing or if he knows what he's getting into, but
Well, I thought it was going to a
must be
bar,
easy.
but this looks pretty cool. I mean, I saw
Yeah,
your
the
mom.
wrap-up party's
that's
great.
all just
Yeah.
water-filled bottles. We actually don't have liquor here.
Well,
No,
that's a great thing.
just-
This is special vodka, right? I mean, this is direct.
Daily Sentinel distilled once.
Still
I'll
one.
tell you a funny story about that. When I was mayor, had an opportunity, and there wasn't much I got to do because when I got into office, they closed the base. And no, it wasn't because of me either. I see Wes like looking at me, but they had
was not a
started the
thought in
base
my head.
realignment and closure commission came, and all of
timing.
a sudden, the timing was not great, right? But I go to this BombCom, they call it, down in Barksdale, Louisiana. I bet you your grandparents might have been when there was opportunities for the Air Force and the community to connect and do things together. And I went down there, and that was during the era now when obviously President Reagan and President Bush, 41, was in office, and the relations had thawed, and Russia had changed. So we're down there. So there were Russian military as well as American military at this air base. And I'm walking around, we're all having some beers and everything, and I'm thinking, look how disciplined those guys are, and the Russians. They're walking around with water. And here we are all drinking beer. And I'll never forget, one of the captains comes over to me and goes, get some of the water for the mayor, And we get over there, and sure enough, it was pure vodka with no ice, nothing.
Yeah, they're
just
different breed when it
pure
comes to vodka.
And it was like
That's Russian water,
it's like
yes.
moonshine.
Yeah.
Yes, Russian water. And it was like, whoa. He goes, so see how disciplined they are?
Well, did you play along with it though? You couldn't. I feel like that's like a scenario where you
didn't blow 'em
can't
in,
show
did
that.
you?
Yeah, you can't.
Yeah, well, no, I
can't
was able
choke
to drink it. Yeah,
Okay,
I drank
all
it.
right.
So,
Well, back at AU at American, I went there to school in D.C. Halloween was a great evening because as a college kid, you go trick or treating at all the embassies.
who'd you dress up
And-
as?
well, I can't remember what I dressed up as, if much at all. But the Russian embassy was great because there was vodka there, and a lot of them did their choice liquor, whatever country.
That's
So
pretty
that was
cool.
kind of fun.
All right.
that
Fun
would be a
fact.
very
Bad
good way.
Yeah.
You just put one of the kind of like Mission Impossible or something, where one of the masks that you can peel off, you can go around as maybe one of the former presidents,
Just
like
keep
look
going
who's
back,
here.
yeah.
And that would be kind of cool. The best place, one of the best embassies in D.C., particularly to watch an inauguration from. Do you know which one that would be? Any guess?
No, which one?
Our neighbors to the north, the Canadian
the
Embassy.
Canadian, okay.
Canadian Embassy is right on Pennsylvania Avenue, and it is a phenomenal place to watch the inaugural parade from. I had the opportunity a couple of times to do it, once with former Congressman Bullard, who brought us there as his guest, and that's where I got the idea, like, wow, this is a pretty cool place. So then representing the border in the state Senate when I was there again for an inauguration, the Canadians invited me to the embassy, and what a remarkable thing, because you can be outside, inside, and beverages, so you get to watch everything and to really enjoy it.
I'll have to get that on the to-do list.
I mean, we also
we
offer
haven't made it
travel tips here on the show. I mean, it's
I
amazing.
know.
The insight we get.
We haven't made it yet though, so we don't get those kind of high-end invites yet. We'll work on it.
Well, there's two aspects to it. There's a big party that goes on in the yard there, which I think wouldn't be too hard to get invited to, and that would be cool. I start there, then you work your way upstairs,
That's fair.
But,
That's fair.
Great place. D.C. was always a lot of fun,
You went down quite a bit, right? I remember as mayor, you'd be down there once in a while.
It seemed like I was there more as mayor than I was now in my role in the Senate. And we made a lot of contacts. I was very active in the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and got elected to their board as a small city, which is pretty rare, and got to meet a lot of the big city mayors from that time. In fact, some of them now former governors, the mayor of Charlotte at the time, former governor of North Carolina. He was a part of the board, and the former governor of Connecticut, Dan Malloy. He was also on the board there. So you got to meet these guys who went on, and interesting experiences, all the way around. And
between all the experience, because you've been a mayor, you've been a county executive, you've been a New York State senator. If you take away the travel and the pay, if you look at just the desk job itself, which one was kind of more hands-on, or which one did you actually like, or do you actually like where you're at? Like, can you kind of share the different levels and what the pros and cons?
That's a great question, and I think about that more now. Because you have two branches of government too, right? I made that point today. We had a ceremony earlier this morning over at SUNY Poly, and they had all the state legislators on one side and the lieutenant governor on the other with the county exec and a few others. I said that's the co-equal branches of government, executive on this side, legislative on that. And there's a difference there because when I was served in the executive branch as the mayor and the county exec, you're on 24/7 because you're getting calls in the middle of the night. I got a lot of calls. In fact, I wish I would have chronicled a lot of these. I remember talking to your grandmother, Brad, at the time. She would talk to me about, you should write some of this stuff down. And I wish I did because now I don't remember as much as I used to. And there were some great experiences. But you would get some interesting calls late at night, as well as the unfortunate calls commensurate with the responsibilities and duties. Like I always made sure that any major public safety problem in the evening, I was called and I would try to get there to support the fire or police departments. And the county the same way. You're getting calls, whether it's public works related or social services related, things of that nature. In the legislature, it's a little different. Right now, it can be like I can sit back and tell those guys, the governor, what they should be doing or not doing. And it's 7 days a week, but you don't have the 24-hour cycle. I'm not getting calls at 2 or 3 in the morning
about garbage pickup, right?
Right, unless somebody's calling to complain about me, maybe But no, that's the significant difference is, that required presence, and it's tough in the middle of the night, because there are times when you have to make decisions when that call comes. I became almost immune to the call. How like in the middle of the night the phone rings and you get startled, which I do now again. But there was a time in my 3 terms as mayor that the phone would ring in the middle of the night and I just pick it up, you know what I mean? Because I knew that you just all of a sudden you're on. But I think the local, they all have unique aspects to it, and there's good and bad. But I think what I enjoyed the most as mayor was the accessibility, because you are the most accessible and the most available because you're here and people can interact with you immediately and regularly. And I like that. And you could also see something and undertake an initiative and actually get a result. County executive became a little more challenging because now you're dealing with, and in Rome you have a strong mayor form of government. As county executive, the legislature has a lot of powers, the county legislature, and you have other independent countywide elected officials who do not report to you, but people think you're their boss. The district attorney, the sheriff, the county clerk, they're independently elected. And even though you have budgetary control, you don't have that. I can't call the DA and say, hey, you do this. And that may be a good thing, particularly in Monroe County, if anybody's seen recently, right? She kind of had a little bit of a bad day.
Yeah,
that happens.
But so if you had to choose which one you enjoyed the most, all things considered.
So mayor,
you're getting there.
I'm getting there. It's taking me a little time.
My seat here. I mean, what is he going to say?
The Senate now has been great too because you get to the Capitol and work on things that have an impact not only regionally but across the state. And that has really been an enjoyable experience to represent people, to advocate for this region, to deliver resources. I mean, you see some of the things that there's been great state funding here in the Wynn Hospital, in the the Adirondack Bank Center. So I think of the 3 right now, I would say Senate and mayor were right up there right now. County exec probably was tougher because of some of the challenges I talked about there. So I compliment County Executive Pacenti because he is the longest serving county executive in our county's history. And I was one of the shortest. Me and Sherry Bullard, I think, were the shortest term county execs.
Hey, as long as you get in the record book somehow.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, some there. So,
yeah, Tony's been there quite a while, right? Yeah.
and like I said, mayor is, this is home, and it was a very fulfilling and enjoyable experience. And we did a lot in those 11 years because it was a true period of transition.
Really was. Right.
And economically, and many of the things that we're seeing today, we began then, and the plans and the seeds were planted. And I'm proud of a lot of what we were able to accomplish there, including having a little musical event that took place.
Might have been a fun time there. I think Dad and I ran into you on that. Actually,
Did you want to stop real quick? Do you want to get a chair and hang? I don't want you to be.
Do you want a cocktail too, or do you want someone? You can come in. Hey, Morgan, could you actually turn on that light for me?
You can sit in this chair.
Yeah, that's not in view. Maybe your kneecaps, but you're more than welcome to join the party here.
Yeah.
We just kind of wing it, so we'll probably just even keep this part. Who knows?
We haven't put anybody to sleep yet.
But we're getting to the good part.
We haven't put anybody to sleep yet, right?
Thank you, Morgan.
So, you brought up your time as mayor. Yeah. Oh, you got to jump over. So your lovely time as mayor, of course, the Woodstock '99 thing. Does that come up a lot?
It does. In fact,
do you hate it?
No, I don't. I don't. No, I don't. You know why? I mean, I always believe, and it took me a long time for this, but people would always say, "Can you describe it?" I think I'm pretty succinct, but unless we're doing a podcast and you want to kind of like delve into things a little bit more,
into the weeds.
But they would always ask me, reporters, "What's your future hope for the city in one word? What would you like it to be, or how would you see it?" And it was always difficult, right? Because one word, it's difficult, and challenging. But ultimately, I came up with that word, and it was vibrancy. I want a vibrant community, because that's full of energy and creative energy is always something very important to me. And I have always worked hard. That was the way we were raised here. That's the great thing about our community, and you all know that from your parents and what you all have accomplished in your lives. It's a great place to grow up and get an education and to be exposed to a lot of different experiences. So when I came in here, I just felt that we were going to continue to challenge and to try things that are different. And when opportunities present themselves, I'm not one to shy away from it. Let's try to do something. We brought a regatta here at one time. So I go, let's make things happen, because things are not always going to fall into your lap. So when Griffiss was realigned and essentially closed, we had to make determinations as to the future plan, the reuse plan. And again, you're seeing many of those benefits today. And one of the things that presented, it was funny because the story was told at the unfortunate loss of Steve DeMio, who did an extraordinary job here in economic development. But I got a call it was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And we're at City Hall, and that was council meeting night. And I happened to be in the building for meetings, but there was a call that there was a group that wanted to meet with me. Steve goes, "Are you willing to meet with them? They want to talk about this event." And I go, "Sure." So we met Michael Lang, who now is deceased. That's where it happened. They came up and said, "Hey, we're thinking about doing this." So Steve was kind of interested too at the time. And I thought there were three reasons why I wanted to do this. One, short-term economic benefit for the community. Secondly, it would give us invaluable experience in doing something very big at a time when the community was kind of down because they were wondering what their future was going to be like. And I felt if we could host and pull off a huge, the world-renowned musical event, that would be amazing. And then exposure, because you would have exposure for the community as this went on. And that night, you'll appreciate this in the media. So that night, we had a local reporter come up to me. It was not the Sentinel. It was another publication. And
it's good to clarify.
And they,
depending where the story goes.
Yeah. Because Sentinel would be right on top of this, right? So this reporter came up to me and said, "What's going on in there tonight?" The meeting that I had just come out of, and I'm thinking, "Oh wow," because nobody wanted anybody to know right now because these are preliminary conversations. So I had to come up with something quick. And I go, well, talking about a possible summer event, And the guy goes, oh, okay. And that was it.
And then no
that
follow-ups.
story could have been broken that night. I'm
and you
thinking.
slipped out there.
So when we made the announcement in February, back then, I went up to the person. He goes, "You SOB." He goes, you. I go, that night you had this back in November.
Just needed probably just a second more.
But so I think there's a lot to be learned from those, right? That experience. I mean, things weren't as perfect as they could have and should have been. In no way do we condone any type of violence. You're seeing that now on college campuses that we can talk about. That's unacceptable. But I think overall, we did some good things in Rome that time. The public responded completely well. The city functioned that whole weekend, and you had over 400,000 people here. And there was an excitement and a vibrancy in the community, and I think you learned lessons from that. And instead of in the end when things didn't go as well, I mean, even traffic moved extremely smoothly. And that was something we identified early on that we had to address, and because previous festivals had terrible traffic snarls. So I think in the end, should we or could we do things like that? Sure, we should. But I mean, you have to address and acknowledge that there were problems, but you see these major festivals like Coachella still going on, on the West Coast and everything, and Burning Man. Things of that nature. So we should never take ourselves out of the mix because there were problems. And so I think in retrospect, it accomplished the three things that I wanted. Obviously, nobody likes, and I've done several documentaries. I've been on Netflix and HBO.
Yeah.
And I always find that interesting, too, because you have 20-something-year-olds now talking about something that happened, when they weren't even born.
Right.
And
right.
I respect opinions, but you're looking at people, they're using 2024 glasses to an event that took place in 1999. It's pretty easy with hindsight to be able to say, this should have been, this could have been.
Monday morning quarterback's pretty easy. It reminds me of like a golf analogy. If you hit a great drive and you can go for a par 5 and 2, like you have a better chance of making birdie, but you can make some bogeys too. But the proper decision was to go for the green. And it doesn't mean you're going to make birdie or eagle, but you got to take that swing. You can't lay up the whole time. And I think that's what the community needed at that time.
And there are advantages of having the event and learning from it and then tweaking. When you go to another venue for the first time, you then are learning again. So either way, it's kind of nice to, it might have been a shit show, but we also know where it happened and where the communication broke down, and we know how to fix it now on step 2. It's like you never really want to be first; you want to be second or third because you can take those opportunities and turn into real results.
Absolutely, and your dad chronicled that. I mean, there's still footage of that. He did a whole series on that. But I mean, it was great. It's great history right now, and so the point is, though, let's move forward and do things, and that's what I like about Rob Esch, and that's what I like about Ray Halbritter. I mean, there's that creative energy, right? They're not resting on laurels here. They're going out, and there's partnerships, obviously, collaboration and partnerships, private and public sector. But what you see is that I love that creative energy. You saw that with the events that are taking place at Nexus and the Adirondack Bank Center, at the Turning Stone, and regionally as a result of their efforts. So I think that's what we need to continue to do, to push ourselves, not only to create economic opportunity, but also to have all types of activities that the community can engage in, and so we never sell ourselves short, because we can do these things.
When you look at the image of early 90s when the base closed to what you thought the path could be to being successful now. Are we on path? Are we behind? Are we in front of? Like, and looking back over the years and you being part of the growth in every sector, how are we doing score-wise in your book from what you guys had the initial conversations right after the base closed to where we are now?
I think we're doing good. And I mean, this was the vision, to make it a multi-use park. And we had a lot of players. It was a great team. That's one illustration of, I think, and the ingredients that have made our region successful. Regardless of our political affiliation or office that we hold, we've worked together as a team. and that's worked in our best interest. And it started from the very beginning. And we started to talk about the reuse and what could it be and what elements should be there. And we were a multi-mission airbase, if you recall, and we took that same approach here, saying this is going to be a multi-dimensional park where you're going to have high tech, you're going to have service industry, you're going to have aviation, you're going to have education, manufacturing. And because I've always believed another good word that I love is diversification. And I always preached economic diversification when I was in local government. And as the chair of the Energy Committee, I talked about having a diversified energy portfolio when we talk about, how should we approach energy policy moving forward in this state and in our nation. So I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, but it's amazing when you look at the number of jobs there, the number of type of industries that are there, I'm pleased, but like I said, we never rest on our laurels.
Yeah.
And we're going to continue. Now we look at the triangle and see the opportunity what the future will present there, and the funding that now has been obtained. That's what I always thought. We should try to position ourselves to take advantage of whatever economic initiative may be out there that we could benefit from. You're seeing that in the chip fab industry. You're seeing that in drones now, and we've positioned ourselves. We tried it with air maintenance, but it wasn't as successful for a variety of reasons, some of it corporate as well as community. But again, we tried it, and I think this was all part of the general plan of a multi-use, and I think that will benefit the community. So you don't live and die with one particular segment of industry.
Yep, good point. One last Woodstock question.
Yeah.
How hard is it to break a champagne bottle? That's my favorite part of that whole thing.
Wait a minute now.
And that was trying to break that bottle.
And that shows you again.
Hilarious.
Hey, that shows narrative again. It's narrative. Shows you not great advanced planning.
Pull that clip.
Is that you got to
pull
did
that
it really
clip.
happen, or are they just setting you up?
No. Well, it was a little bit of both, right? So what happened first of all is somebody had the idea that we should christen the stage.
You got to christen the stage, right?
And
yeah,
then, but they went and got a magnum of champagne, not a bottle of champagne. So it's a little different.
So you got set up.
And but in the end, I broke the bottle. So if you go through the whole thing,
perseverance,
it's a
good lesson
and determination.
Yes.
You're right. Just like our vision for the park and the future of our community.
There you go.
But so
this
yes,
guy should be a politician. See how he spun that into something good?
Really well. It's like he's been doing this for a while.
and I was working out back then too. So that's what I was really worried about. It's like, something wrong with me because I should be able to break this thing.
Yeah, at that point you're like, oh shit, now what do I do?
But then it became a great metaphor, right?
Yeah.
As to what took place and how it took place for the narrative that both HBO and Netflix wanted to present. By the way, there's another one out there too, which I don't believe we'll see because I couldn't believe 3 people approached us. And maybe you can tell me if this was a good idea too, because when you talk about setups, right?
Right.
So Hulu was another one that filmed. By the way, I sat for 16 hours for Netflix, 2 sessions. HBO was about 9 hours, and Hulu was about 8 hours of sitting and being interviewed like this. But the Hulu interview took place.
Oh my God!
HBO
this podcast is nothing then.
HBO was right on site. Netflix, for some reason, wanted to go to the diner. We went to Eddie's, and they chose it for some reason. I'm not sure why. What they wanted. For the Hulu one, which we haven't seen, and I don't know that we'll ever see it, they asked, and we gave them a number of potential sites. They chose the tavern, Saranac Tavern. So we did that there. But they insisted that I have a beer by me, when we were doing the interview, because they go, we're in a tavern, so you should have a beer. And I think, are you setting me up here for something?
The whole time you feel like they're trying to get you to say something dumb to make you look like...
well, I had guys do that, like in the press.
For 8 hours, they're going to wear you down. It's like an interrogation. Does it feel like that or no?
To a degree, it does.
Yeah.
And they did set it up a little bit that way because they had the producer asking certain questions, and then all of a sudden... the director asking the questions, and all of a sudden the producer was going to come in and they became the very social questions when she approached me, and asked, was this acceptable, this type of level of, what happened? And so we, but it was fine. I'm used, you deal with the press, you realize that, I think there's an old saying, right, that if you're going to be under the spotlight, it can be a very nice, warm feeling, but it also can burn you. Mm-hmm. So I'm accustomed to that interaction with the press. It's not always going to be what you would like to see, but then again, they have a job and a role and responsibility, right? They're not my PR firm, but I do believe that was a narrative that they wanted to present too, and they did so.
Are you ever decline these interviews? Like, what do I have to gain by this besides sitting on my butt for 8 hours and feeling like I got to sweat out questions?
That's a great question, and you know why I've always said yes, because I want to be available and accessible.
Yeah, it's admirable.
And also,
I don't know if I would do that, to be honest.
And also, I wanted to be able to give a perspective, from a realistic perspective of what took place from my seat,
because you give a bit of the storytelling, maybe.
Right. But that's also probably why they had him for 16 hours, because he was doing such a good job. They just weren't getting what they wanted. They were waiting for the slip up.
Exactly.
This guy's good. We thought we could wrap him up in 30 minutes.
I had one guy, like Rolling Stone, with all the interviews that we did, I remember Rolling Stone at one time coming back and one guy characterizing me as like not acknowledging the problems. I go, I totally acknowledge the problems and totally understand what's unacceptable. But he referred to me as like the mayor from Jaws, you know what I mean? That like,
there are no sharks.
Nothing wrong into a good thing, you never know.
But those are the uncalled for things, and I understand that's what's the type of journalism. If it doesn't bleed, right?
Bleeds, it leads.
If it bleeds, it leads. Right?
That's the thing that we always struggle with, because I think that's part of the reason why What's Upstate website was created, because all the top stories are the meth busts and the major fires, and it's just what Google brings to the top of the page when you search a city. And I think the goal of What's Upstate was to try to control the narrative a little bit, kind of highlight and redirect people to a site of positivity. And really, there's a lot to offer. Everybody we talk to on the business park, and when we have people come in from all over the world, they really enjoy their time here. And part of it is living here, right? As we talked I think with Heather at NRA, it's just, when you live in a location and you're not exposed to a lot, and you don't get away and you don't come back, you don't really see just how good something can be. And when people come back, they're like, this is a good place. This is home. And that's why we're both here. That's why we love supporting the area. And there's
our future leaders, our current leaders. I mean, because you all were people that, were hopeful. We were hopeful that people like you would agree and want to come back to your home and not only come back, but also be a major part of it. And you guys are the leaders of the community today. And that's an important thing, to have that youthful exuberance, as well as your experience and the background that you bring. And we talked about that. It's wholesome here, and I think when you're going to look to locate somewhere, you're going to look at how safe is it? How good is the health care? What type of quality education can my family benefit from here? So when you, and the personal interaction here too, how amiable is the community? I think you have all of those, and then you throw in the recreational opportunities and outlets here. So there is a lot of benefit here. And I think if there was one part of the pandemic that really benefited this area, it would be that right there. When now because I knew a lot of young people who moved away because the job took them to the metropolitan area, and they always said, I would love to have a place here in upstate New York, on the lake or somewhere, on a golf course where I could live and do my work that I'm doing, because that work is unique to that specific area, and be compensated accordingly. But that opportunity to present, but now it does to a certain extent.
I'm going to go back before you were mayor, if you don't mind.
Oh, wow.
Jumping around a bit here, but you went to school at Brockport for poli-sci. Was this your plan the whole time? Did you have you were poli? I was a poli-sci guy too.
Yeah, it worked out real well.
It worked out great. Not looking.
He makes the best old fashioned, I'll tell you.
Was that your goals? Like, I want to be mayor. I want to lead. I want to get into this, or is it just a kind of a casual interest that grew into something else?
It would probably be an interest that grew into something else. My interest was in government service. So when I studied political science in college, it truly interested in me, and I was actually looking at the Foreign Service at one time. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I was looking at maybe going to the nation's capital or doing something different, maybe international relations. And at the time, I kind of struggled, and I came back to the community and tried to figure out what am I going to do with this poli-sci degree now, right? And I had the opportunity to join up my first campaign, and it was the campaign of Carl Eilenberg, who at the time was a local personality and well loved by the community because he was involved in all segments of the community, and got involved in that campaign, and that was it. And then I was offered an opportunity here, and that's where that interest grew, saying, well, I think that's something that's interesting too. And I said this to a couple of the mayors. You always look at this and you think, I can do this. And they do have the skill set necessary to do it. But until you actually sit in the chair, it becomes a whole different experience. And I served with Eilenberg, and I was close enough to it. So I remember when I was running, I was a young guy. I was the youngest mayor elected in the city under the strong mayor form of government. I think Dave Townsend, Assemblyman Townsend's dad, was the same age, but he was under the city manager form of government.
Gotcha.
So they, you sit there and you're close to it, and you say like, hey, it's not that bad, we can do this, we should do this, But then when you're sitting there and those decisions come to your desk and it ultimately is you in the end, it's a whole different experience. And it's hard to explain, and it's a small city, it's not a large city, but sometimes it's more complicated. Because when you're in New York City, you got layers and layers of staff and people that can do things, or when you're in a small village, then it's really direct, immediate. So when you get to a size, of Rome's and a little larger here, like in between, it becomes a little more challenging because you got to do a little bit of everything, Not only do you do the day-to-day work and the policy, but you got to, get in there and do things that you don't have the staff to do, so.
Yeah, and Rome has a new mayor. Utica has a new mayor. Have you had much to chat with them, or how's that been going?
Yeah, absolutely. Very good. We've had conversations. Both of them, I expressed not only congratulations, but offered to be willing to do two things. Number one, obviously, we will work closely with them on any state issue that they need our assistance on. So we'll be working regularly with them on identifying concerns and delivering resources. That's the first thing. That would be the formal relationship from a state and local government. But beyond that, I've offered my time because I'm a former mayor. So I have played that role, and I know what is entailed and some of the things that I've learned from my experience. And so I've also offered that too. And we have had some conversations on both those areas.
I was wondering if anyone ever takes you up on that, because, Jackie was in before that, and I'm sure you probably offered the same thing to her. And I wondered, do they ever ring you up and say, hey, what do you think about this?
We've had conversations, and with several of the mayors, and what do you think? How would you, did you or how would you deal with something like this? I think when I became mayor, I did that. I had Carl, but I also wanted to go and meet some other mayors and to find out what it was like and what advice they would give me. And one that I remember, and I tell his sons this all the time now, the mayor of Syracuse at the time was Tom Young. He was the former state fair director, and he became mayor of Syracuse, a Democrat. And I went and met with him, and he was just very gracious. And we became friends and communicated over the years. And his son now is a lobbyist, so he just called me on a recent budget issue. And I always remember Tom saying to me, the one thing you got to do is get a handle on your time, because time is going to be very challenging. Yeah. And I'm thinking at the time I was, my early 30s, and I was single, and I'm thinking that's not going to be an issue whatsoever. I can handle this. Within the first 6 months, I'm thinking he was a prophet. He was like, this is amazing and that's a great question that kids ask. When they ask me, what is the toughest part of the job that you've faced then and now? It's time management. because you still have a personal life, but you have your professional responsibilities and duties. And in elective office and in public life, it becomes there's significant demands. It's rewarding, but there are significant demands.
Wes, are you listening to him?
I'm listening.
All right, thank you.
Well, it's funny when you're mayor, like you were saying earlier, how you're getting calls at 24 hours a day. But I mean, you're suddenly thrust into being a CEO of a pretty decent sized corporation overnight,
And that's
the person that's going to put out all the fires, and that all goes to you. Right?
And that's
a big
another
change.
because the old saying, the buck stops here, right?
Right.
But that's a funny thing that you say too, because you are a public sector CEO. A lot of people criticize government officials; they can't make it in the private sector. I think it's reversed in the sense that if you've held a public sector CEO, you can handle private sector chief executive officer duties because you don't have to deal with the same things. I mean, you have the press in the public sector. You don't have that in the private sector.
Right.
You have different collective bargaining requirements with the unions than you would in the private sector. And so if you look at some of the things that is imposed on the public sector, I just always thought it was demeaning to somebody who was in public life to say, well, you wouldn't make it in a private sector. I don't agree with that.
Those are some good points, right? Yeah, there's some unique challenges for sure.
I'll tell you, I'll give you like a little story, like if I'm trying to remember now, but it's funny how the public, so the middle of the night in wintertime here, and the phone rings and at like 3:30, 4 a.m. in the morning, like complaining about something not being plowed properly, right? So the guy says to me as I'm talking to him, he goes like, well, I know I shouldn't have called you here, but I didn't want to bother the Public Works Commissioner at this hour. So I'm thinking like, okay, you didn't want to call the Public Works Department, but you'll call the mayor, right? So I go, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to call him now. I said, I'm going to just like, and
You didn't have a 3/4 ton in your driveway you can go plow somebody out?
no, I didn't have that, unfortunately. I was using the shovel myself back then.
Joe reminded me, I was out in Albany doing some lobbying for the newspaper stuff we've been working on, and it turned out that we think that Joe's the only politician that we've ever endorsed in our 160 years.
Wow.
So we apparently, and I talked to Dad. He's like, nope, I think that's actually right. Other than my great uncle that ran for Congress at one point, but that doesn't count. That doesn't count. But I guess Joe Griffo.
Well, that's pretty impressive.
I might be able to
that
find
should be
some
on
actual
on the
endorsement,
pamphlets, guys.
I mean, that's
cards.
got to be something. But because usually, I don't think. I think it's bad for the press to endorse in general. But obviously, I think it was because there's another Republican that was.
What happened,
independent or
what happened? It was with another newspaper that made a decision to endorse, and the endorsement I think didn't sit well with a lot of people for a lot of reasons at the time. We had a three-way race back then. It was 1999, and
heck of a year.
Yeah,
There's a lot going on.
And I can hear Prince singing in the background. You know what I mean? But and he was scheduled to be at Woodstock at one time. That was the great surprise. They were working on bringing Prince.
There were so many rumors. Remember that? I don't know. I mean, you were probably too young, right?
Yeah.
I went. I did go. I was 12.
Some great pictures of him.
Yeah, I mean, but also I was very lucky because being part of the press,
Well,
you just
topless
had,
girls
You could,
that
you
was
could have,
hanging out.
you got to expose it sometime. But no, there was an advantage of being a press because we did have different access, so you didn't have to be in a mosh pit to get a view. I mean, we backstage with a couple of different bands.
You got some great pictures, and you still have an outstanding photojournalist here, John Clifford.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I mean, John is phenomenal, obviously, and he's still, I think. You can chronicle stuff right from him.
Yep.
But going back to the endorsement, I think at the time your editorial staff just looked at this and said this is wrong, and we're going to just engage because we want the community to know what's going on here. And that would have been my third term that I was seeking at the time, and I thought we had done a lot over. Those 8 years, to reposition this community and to regrow the community. I mean, the hospital here, I privatized the hospital.
Privatized it, yeah.
So, and that was not easy. I mean, that one there were people that came and did stories on that later. In fact, on that one, the press was kind of like beating me up, saying I was making a wrong move. And I should be approaching it.
Waiting for just about 50%.
But then I got a great reverse editorial when it was done, thanking me for my dogged determination, and seeing it through. So
it was just a test to make sure you weren't reading too many newspapers.
Yeah,
you passed, so well done.
We wanted to make sure I did more than just look at the pictures. You know what I mean? So.
Right.
Just at your current capacity, state budget passed. Obviously, a huge win for us in the journalism sector because we were able to get the Local Journalism Sustainability Act. It turns into numbers after that. I forgot what it is, but other than that, what's it like going through the budget? I mean, that's got to be
A laugh a
200
minute.
I mean,
through a $237 billion budget.
yeah. I mean,
That's almost
just
real
gotta-
money.
Yeah, yeah. Remember the old saying? I think it was former Senator Dirksen. I think he was from Illinois, and he said a billion here, a billion there. Sooner or later, it all adds up. You know?
Yeah, pretty much, right?
So, and that was talking about the federal budget, but it's a lot of money, and it's a grueling process. But again, I think coming from the executive branch, and obviously they were much smaller budgets, but you learn something from that, and you have an obligation in local government. You have to produce a balanced budget on time. But something goes wrong when you hit the state capital and the national capital, because then they forget about all that.
Feels like that's optional. Those
Well,
deadlines.
yeah, and it's wrong because we have a deadline of April 1st, just like your publication deadline. You don't get to say, oh, let's forget about it today. We can't make the deadline. We'll move it back. You got to hit the deadline, and you got to be able to publish that paper and put it out, or the edition online. And I think the problem in Albany and Washington nowadays is it doesn't matter to them, and that's wrong. So that's the first problem, that we have, that we have an obligation and responsibility and we don't meet it, and there's not a real consequence. Well, there is a consequence. The legislators don't get paid.
Is that enough of an incentive to Gucci and
Apparently
action, or what?
not, though, because we're still late. But the governor gets paid and the staff get paid. I don't know how they negotiated that one, but it was like so I think you have that. Then secondly, it becomes a blueprint, obviously, and priorities are important. And I think we've had a lot of misguided priorities over the last several years. We have excessive spending. I think the reasons people leave New York, I had one governor say it was because of the weather, and our governor now talks about housing. I don't think those factors are significant factors. They may be factors. I think the reason there's an outward migration in New York is because people can't afford to live in this state anymore. There's an affordability issue. People are fearful of their safety, so there's a public safety issue. So I think when you look at those type of things, then you have to look at the priorities in a budget. And I think ours have been misguided, in that regard. So it's an overwhelming process. It's structured okay. it begins with the presentation by the executive, the proposal. Then it goes into the public hearing process. The structure works, so you get to hear from different segments of society as to what the impact will be. And then you go into conference committees to discuss. You have one house budgets. Each house of the legislature proposes a budget. Then you go into conference committees. So all of that sounds and looks good. They just don't make it work the way it should. That's my biggest criticism of what happens. So you end up with something like this, and now you have education across the state in turmoil. Many school districts who will be presenting budgets over the next couple of weeks are going to be putting significant tax increases on the public.
Right.
And you have people losing their jobs. That's wrong. And it's because of the way we approach this. The governor cut, and there was restoration of most of those cuts, but they didn't give increases based on inflation. And the governor wanted to change the way she calculates future funding from the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, to an 8-year average, pushed back on that, but then arbitrarily they changed the number of the CPI. Instead of 4.1, they made it 2.8. It's like only in Albany or Washington can you do
just
all
this
the
change
stuff.
the
numbers,
number.
the unemployment,
Right.
everything seems to
Right.
change.
Yeah, but you get to make
what?
any number you want.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Think about it. I mean,
Boy, our golf scores would be much better if we could just do that.
yeah, well,
I know.
it would be outstanding. I could even be a golfer at that,
Your education's tough right now because school districts looking at double-digit tax increases, trying to cut positions. Yet my son's first grade class has 30 kids, and they're cutting positions. Like, where are we going here?
Yeah, and you have teacher shortages right now
Right.
too, and I think so. The point there is again misguided, right? I mean, I know that there needs to be compromise, and everybody's not going to get, or each side's not going to get what they want. But I think when you look at this and you look at the priorities, that we talked about, why are people leaving? Well, what is the contributing factor to the outward migration? It's the burden we're putting on businesses. It's the mandates we're putting on schools and local governments. And these are easy things. Like I have a simple bill on mandate relief and regulatory reform, a moratorium, then a commission established to review and determine what can be taken off. And on that commission would be the actual stakeholders, not the politicians. I mean, politicians can be on it, but you would have, like, if it's education, teachers, school administrators, and Board of Education members. They should be on there giving you their advice. Just like when they and then no new mandate without funding. And I go to the bail policies. I'm kind of segueing here quickly. The criminal justice policies. When bail was done, and it's a disaster, they never consulted law enforcement or prosecutors or even criminal defense attorneys.
You might want to talk to the experts in that field.
Why not talk to the people on the ground and say, look, we need reform. What's the best way? What is your perspective or opinion? And incorporate that when you're developing the policy. You know, that's how I ran local government. I mean, you remember the Lincoln stories on Lincoln's cabinet was really a lot of his adversaries, but he wanted a different perspective from everybody. And in the end, he felt confident in his own ability to make the determination and decision accordingly with the facts that he got.
What's the probability of something like, I think what you just pitched is, it makes sense, but it almost seems like things need to almost get so bad sometimes where people then come out of the woodworks and say, oh yeah, we probably should have done something about this. We're out of money. We don't have the right jobs. Like, is something like your adjustment in policy, or not? I guess it's not policy, but in the procedure, what does it take to get people on board before it gets too late? Before we realize, well, we already are kind of too late. But besides the point, like, what's the momentum needed in order for something like that to, oh, this is a good idea. Let's push it. Let's vet this.
Well, I think in that regard, you know, elections have consequences, right? Because you elect people and then they're making decisions and you have to make a determination if they're representing your interests the right way. And I think right now we're not seeing that. We have, you know, there's a lack of checks and balances. There's a lack of transparency. I think divided government worked because it forced people to compromise and you found consensus ultimately as a result of that. Sometimes it can go into gridlock. I understand that. But I think more than not, with the right people in place, that works better than when you have total control from one party and one particular ideology. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what you're seeing right now. You know, and the pendulums swing. The pendulum swings back and forth. Yeah. Right now it is swung. But what that takes is an informed and educated electorate, the voter. The voter needs to understand that when they go there, that they're going to, like, this was a great one. I asked we're home to Zogby polling here, right? John Zogby's a pollster. He's internationally renowned. So I said to John, I go, you got to explain to me this one. How can 59% of New Yorkers, when polled, in a number of polls, not only yours, it could be Marist and Siena, all say that we're going in the wrong direction. The state is headed in the wrong direction. But then the majority of those same people put into office the person who's leading them into the direction they don't want to go. Right. I go, I just got to figure that one out. You got to help me with that. And I think a lot of
What did he say? Did he have an answer for it?
Well, he did. Yeah. First he laughed.
Name ID?
First he laughed. Yeah. Well, that's it. It's brand. It's brand ID. Yeah. It's brand because people want to stick with the brand and or thinking that, well, this person's from our region. You know what I mean? And I think we got to go further than that now. We've got to say, look, we don't like these policies, so we've got to change them. And the only way to change them is to change, you know, the people who are there. And that's when you'll see that, you know, that will resonate, hopefully. And it's not to say people are bad people, you know, it just may be some bad ideas, you know, or different ideas. And I don't think we should be looking at things ideologically. Like, we'll go back to energy. And when I was chair of the Energy Committee, what I tried to say is I embrace clean energy, but I want to do it in a reasonable and a realistic manner. Right. I'll give you a perfect illustration. You've now put a mandate on all school districts, we'll go back to school districts, to have electric buses. And that is unaffordable for these school districts because they've offered them $500 million funding for them to convert. But guess how much the price tag is for all the school districts in the state of New York? $20 billion. So $500 million. It's disingenuous. And then secondly, there's a reliability issue. You know, they don't know if these buses are going to work if you talk to the people who actually operate the buses.
Right.
So it goes back to, what I used to say is diversified portfolio. Don't put all our eggs in one basket because we don't want to live and die, because there's where the vulnerability is for the next on a threat assessment, in my opinion, where people taking down the power grid or the water systems. It's not going to be planes and buildings anymore. You know, there's a different kind of cyber warfare that's going on and terrorist activity that we have to be mindful of, and that we are obviously nationally and from a defense perspective, from a Department of Justice perspective. But I just don't know why you do these kind of things. So why not approach it? I try to say use common sense and let's make it realistic and reasonable for a time frame and an approach. And we're missing that right now because it's more ideologically driven than it is, you know, from a reasonableness perspective.
I'm on board. I agree. I'm on the same page. Yeah, we could talk forever on this, but anything that you know,
have I put anybody to sleep? You
No.
think yet or no? How
No,
am I
I
doing?
wanna keep going.
How am I doing compared to
I'm
some
kind
of
of
the
getting
other
fired
guests?
up. This is kind of a.
going back into poli sci. Are you going to go
I'm
with
getting inspired here.
No, we've gone over the mayor thing. We can't. You heard about the
Hey,
time.
I can't. I'm not getting in the middle of that one. All right.
Oh God, you don't have anything going
He's
on.
worse than my wife telling me to get out of this stuff.
Not to say you wouldn't be good. I'm just saying capacity wise.
Right, right.
How the hell are you going to do
We
that?
got a bit of a juggle going on as is.
You got a little bit going
He
on.
can make it. I'll go back again. That he makes a great old fashioned on the fly. on the fly. He didn't have the right ingredients or utensils. I think. Remember that party we were at? And you go, but I'm going to put this together.
Yeah.
You did, and it was good.
All right, see?
Wow.
See?
I'm gonna have to vet that one. We'll have to see. I want to see it. Anything else you can add to the point of the order here, or
no,
anything we appreciate you having on, and you're gonna wrap up the season nicely for us.
Yeah,
So
and I'd
this
love
is
to come back if you want me. You keep having Lanigan on. I said it's like, you know, what the heck.
Well, the mayor's here. You know, he's accessible. Actually, you know, it's tough though. Like he said, I think the one thing that I got from him, maybe I'm putting words in his mouth, but it is time management, right? You know, when you actually are in the seat, you'll realize. And he had a crash course. He wasn't a CEO. He's never run a company. So I think it is an eye opener. But you know, you take it through a fire hose and put fires out where you can and just learn. I mean,
and the one thing you'll find too in this is you're everybody's friend until you make a decision, and you have to make a decision. And I think that's the most uncomforting thing for a lot of people who enter into this. It was with Carl Eilenberg when he came in, because he was, again, a popular radio guy and everything. And it was for me and for everybody probably after me, Jim Brown and Jackie Izzo and Joe Fusco. I mean, when you got there and you started making decisions, there are all of a sudden people that are yelling at you that were supporting you.
Right,
know?
the mayor's ball attendance is about 1,000 the first year. And then after you piss everyone off, you got about 6 people
There's the
left.
barometer,
By
right?
the
You look
fourth
at the
year.
barometer, and
Just
year
you-
4
you and
or
your second
whatever.
cousin left, yeah.
So it's funny, but very good as a measurement. But that's what happens, you know. And it's, you know, I'm only busting them on you, obviously, but I do enjoy conversations like this, and I'm happy to come on again. So you let me know maybe in the fall or whatever when you come back. Maybe we can talk about.
The fall sounds
The
great.
fall sounds good. We got a lot going on, but
Oh, is that, when do you do these? I mean, do you have a time
We try to
frame
do them
for
when
this?
there's snow on the ground because the
Oh,
golf
only
business is
winter.
a little
All right.
tough.
Okay.
So we're kind of wrapping up this season now. So
What's
can,
the season though? Are you kind of like a,
we wing this, Joe.
whatever.
Yeah, you know, we
right.
really
It makes
really
it sound more official. We say it,
But-
the
but-
season.
winter? It's the winter.
Yeah, but to your point,
the winter solstice.
Yes.
the main thing that we like about this is, especially why we have Jeff on, is that we can get into a topic a little more in depth.
Yeah.
You can hear from the mayor's mouth about certain things, and the same thing if there's a state thing that we can put out there, and even with county, with Joe, actually with Tony, we have him coming out. He visited the border. He wanted to talk about that. You know, that form we can really go back and forth instead of it just be a quote or a clickbait thing.
So I did something. I've always tried to be accessible and available, and I did something. Started this with Mayor. We did town hall meetings. We did teletown meetings. We did video town halls. We did. I was actually knocking on doors, not in an election year, but in an off year. Hey, how's kind of the old Ed Koch thing? How am I doing? You know what I mean? And so I did one thing though, which I was told at the time was not going to be successful. So it was going to be a live call-in show on media, on TV. And we were going to do it 4 times a year. And I was told by everybody, don't get your hopes up. In fact, you better have some guests on because you're not going to be able to
fill the
keep
space
it,
in time,
fill
yeah.
the space.
Yep.
So I asked Kathy Contino-Turner, who was a anchor on TV at the time, if she would do it. I gave it the name, It's Your Call, Rome, little double entendre, right? So we did this, and you know what? It never, I mean, the whole hour went. So your point is well made and well taken. Because people just kept calling and talking about everything, and I was interacting with them. And Kathy would sit there most of the time, just like, "Oh well, okay,
here we go.
this is good. Like, start calling.
Next caller, please."
But it was, it was very good, and I enjoy that. It's something I've always enjoyed, something that I hope I'll continue to do. So thank you guys for doing something like this, because I think it's great, and hopefully I didn't put anybody to sleep today on this. Part of your last podcast.
I enjoyed it.
You were entertaining and fantastic. Thanks, Joe. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, we do.
Appreciate Tito's too. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.